Welcome to the intersection where land development converges with all things real estate. Hello, my name is Arley Greene. I'm the land development optimizer at Arleca Property Group. Today, we're delving into affordable housing opportunities, finding homes to be exact. I'd like to introduce Nikki Papp, entrepreneur and millennial, who leaped at a chance at the housing opportunity, but was met with many missteps and challenges. Nikki, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me, Arley. I'm really excited to pass on my learning experiences. As you said, I have began the start of a modular or tiny home development project, and I learned a lot from it. Didn't go the way we had hoped, but definitely want to pass on those learnings to you as listeners and hope that you have a smooth experience if you are delving into that modular or tiny home realm as a housing solution. I hope that you don't experience the same outcome and hope to put out good into the world and help others, and hopefully can have our listeners and viewers kind of contribute to that if they are able to really contribute to a positive ending to what is now evolving as a housing situation for myself and my life. And I am very entrepreneurial and am always finding a solution to life's challenges. I came across the modular tiny home solution during COVID 2020, watching Tiny House Nation on Netflix. I really got into it. I saw all the episodes. I was really jazzed about it. And I do believe that this is the solution to the housing crisis that we're experiencing in Canada.
Just thinking that our audience might be confused with the terms tiny homes and ADUs. In my past, talking to people kind of interchange the words, and there
Yeah,
actually is
they
a
definitely
difference.
do. Yeah, there
Yeah.
is.
So a tiny home is a small standalone residence for full-time living, either on wheels or on a foundation, and to be serve as a primary residence. ADU is often known as accessory or additional dwelling unit, is a secondary housing unit on the same property as a main house, either attached or detached. It's often used for guests, family, or rental income like Airbnb. The key difference is a tiny home is usually a primary residence, whereas the ADU is an additional unit on an existing property. So, Nikki, let's dive into what's happening with you in your tiny home experience.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you leveling the playing field for our listeners and watchers because it can get confusing. ADUs, tiny homes, modular homes. It's great to level that. And yeah, it would be actually tiny home slash modular home is what I had begun
Yeah.
in terms of a project, just to clarify. But I really wanted to get into this space, gaining independence as a young millennial woman. I was at a point in my life where I really needed and wanted my own home. I was in a situation where that was necessary to seek my own living space. I did have the means, being a previous first time home buyer, where bought and sold my first home when my ex and I split up. So I do want to give a quick shout out to EXP Realty, Miranda and Brett. They really did me a solid and were able to get awesome additional income from the sale for my ex and I. It was a really pleasant experience working with them. Definitely check those guys out. There's a need for myself at the time, and that's how I began.
Well, that's good to hear. Nikki, I have to tell you something. A lot of times when I turn on the news or the radio, I always hear this scary news that housing is impossible for people of your age, millennials.
Mhm.
Incomes are either stagnant or decreasing, and housing is going up, and it seems like an impossibility. Your story of modular build, which is prefabricated, as
Yes.
opposed to custom built. I'm curious. Please continue your story.
Yeah, you make a really great point there. Messages are shoved down our throats on the news, like, oh, millennials can't afford anything. To me, I'm like, well, watch me. But it did go south, but I still very much believe in this direction. I just need to recoup and come back a little bit stronger once I am able to. As you mentioned and alluded to that housing crisis, as an independent millennial woman, I realized how hard it was to get into the traditional housing market on a single salary, even though I was making a good amount of income. And then I looked at the numbers. In Canada, tiny home or modular home can cost less than 200K versus the average cost of a home that is around 711K or so. And that's from all provinces across Canada, that stat. Now, the average cost of rent is $2,127 in Canada as of April 2025. And most provinces are even higher. Whereas a tiny house loan payment can run as low as 300 to 400 a month. Can you imagine having rent for 300, 400 a month? You don't hear that these days. That's kind of where it made sense because I had that little bit of a nest egg, if you will, from that house sale. That's where my brain went. And that's what I was aiming to solve it with.
Let me explain the housing crisis in Ontario. The provincial government's Bill 23, also known as More Homes Built Faster Act, aims to improve Ontario's housing supply by making it easier and faster to approve new developments. Its primary goal is to increase the availability of affordable housing across the province. The bill is designed to boost housing to 1.5 million options and affordability for residents in Ontario by 2031. With opportunity comes unknowns and risks. Nikki, please continue your story.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to unknowns and risks, that's for sure. And yes, I'm very hopeful for this Bill 23 because, like I said, I'm not giving up on this path. It's just a little bump in the road. Here's where my entrepreneurial spirit comes in. I thought there's got to be a better way and a better solution to this housing crisis we're all experiencing. I hopped online to do my research and I found modular/tiny homes as the solution. I did really fall in love with this solution because I believe it was a sustainable approach to comfortable living with creature comforts in a realistic, approachable package, meaning the price. I thought, okay, I will have to declutter. I can't have as many things. That's a fact if you're downsizing. This could be a liberating experience, creating a sense of freedom and weight for material possessions that don't hold any meaning to me anyway. In our society, especially North America, it's full of consumerism. So it's easy to pack on a lot of things that you don't really need or want. You may go through it and forget that you even had it. And you're kind of like, wow, feel like I went shopping again and something exciting in terms of a newly found possession. So I just wanted to be surrounded by possessions that are meaningful. And this would have kind of guided me into doing so because you're forced into a smaller package, if you will, or smaller size of homes. You didn't really even have the room. Research, I discovered a person who's a real estate agent, but also was part of the founding team of a modular house building company. And the homes were self-sustaining. They had everything I needed for a reasonable price tag, but they also had luxury finishes and a style that I really liked, like Scandinavian Japanese style. When my bathroom renovation, I wanted wood, I wanted greens, I wanted a relaxing aura within the space. I really liked what they had to offer. The real estate agent was able to find a piece of land for the homes, and then the home would have been placed onto that land. And that was supposed to be in Puss Lynch and Guelph area. So it really did check all the boxes in terms of purchasing that
Right.
land.
And I like
That,
the idea that you had options.
yeah,
Even though it's a modular build, you had a menu of options of how you wanted the finishes to look. And I think that's very
yes.
important. A lot of people that are getting into the modular build idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I had options to choose from. There was a customization element, but then they had models. So they were kind of pre-designed, but you had the opportunity to make changes and small tweaks that worked for you. Then I got into the custom space of what they were offering. So I got two modular independent units that then became attached. They were able to make it almost the size of a decent condo. And so to me, I thought that was a great solution where it's like condo without the condo fees with a lot of nature around on a canal. It was perfect. But this person began buying land and a custom designed modular home. They guided me through the process. Unfortunately, there were some bumps in the road. My intention was well intentioned by buying separate land that wasn't above my means. And being able to put the homes was part of it. It was supposed to just be a small loan, home construction loan is what I was going for. And fast forward to the whole thing taking a turn. My experience of finding an offering on the land was great initially until I lost my large deposit on the land, $35,000 so far. The deal was lost. The land is lost. The landowner now has that 35,000 legally, now in the position of needing to find new owners for these modular units. That's where it's called a reassigned sale. There's
Yes.
opportunity to also help folks get other homes that are available in the catalog of what this company has. I am also signed on to sell these units. Should that be a need for our listeners, I can assist with that. The main goal here is to get new owners for these units that have land, have the means, and are able to do a reassigned sale.
Mm.
So I do also want to really emphasize to our listeners and watchers about the experience I had with working with a mortgage broker, presenting my tiny home investments to large financial organizations or private lenders. That was nothing short of a challenge. This innovative solution to the housing crisis is still so new, and it tends to be relatively misunderstood. Most investors that were approached were quite apprehensive towards something different than traditional housing market or housing solution where you have your traditional house on the land. My tiny modular home investment was presented as separate land and a separate modular home. Still in the building phases, investors really didn't like that. They were confused by it. They were thinking about all the risks, all the red flags and alarms went off. Because of this, I didn't get approval initially. And I also worked with a large bank. The large bank was apprehensive and didn't even accept my renter income as part of my income. So then my income bracket lowered, resulting in not getting an approval. I was working full time. It was chaos. I didn't have the ability to seek out another bank. I ended up having to pay $10,000 for an extension to get the closing date pushed forward so that I could try to get funding. We did end up getting a private lender, but that would have ended up costing me $5,000 or so a month, just the cost of borrowing, because they had a lot of fees added on top of the mortgage amount itself, which was just shy of $400,000. And I thought that was reasonable for an independent woman making it about 80K with all her income streams, but that didn't end up panning out because the renter income was not accepted, brought me down. And so there's a lot of factors out of my control. I lost the deposits on the land. The land itself was lost. And now what I currently have is large deposits tied up in the modular home units until I find new owners for them for that reassigned sale. So it's about 120K tied up in deposits that I unfortunately don't have access to right now. The only way the company agreed to provide them back to me is to find a buyer that goes through a reassignment sale for these units. And that would include a free tour of the facility on my behalf. I'd be able to guide anyone interested to get a well-informed approach so they're not going in blindly.
It's great that you're sharing your experience with our audience and viewers. But how can they help you?
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking that question. The best way to help me is to reach out to me over Instagram, which we'll get into the contact details near the end. But also, you can check out my website, which will also get into the end. You can fill out an interest form. You can reach out through those means, and then I can get you connected and set up for an initial call. I've got a presentation to show you exactly what you have as options. Then we can set up a walkthrough to the building facility, which is located in Brantford, Ontario. So there's a lot of different ways listeners can help, or they can simply share this podcast episode with their friends and family that they think might be interested. Get the word out and start talking about this. Start having these conversations and normalizing tiny modular ADU homes as a solution to the housing crisis. Don't resist it so much. Some people resist it because it's new and misunderstood.
Well, looking back at your experience, what's the biggest lessons learned?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. The biggest lessons I will say to start is really seek out real estate and professionals that understand the tiny modular / ADU direction as to solve the housing crisis. For example, I learned how important it was to find a realtor and mortgage broker that actually understood and specialized in this tiny modular ADU home direction, but also actually have a vested interest in the sustainable lifestyle it offers. So you don't want to go with a real estate agent that specializes in luxury mansions. The real estate agent I worked with sourced a piece of land with existing utilities in an existing tiny home community because she was well-versed in this space. So as much as it didn't really pan out, she did have that expertise and context to be able to move the project along. I'm sure you work with a mortgage broker who specializes in creative real estate mortgage positioning for a successful application. Not every lender understood this newer innovation and direction and almost resisted it. I do want to give a shout out to Corey Badar. He is part of our real estate investing meetup monthly, and he's the co-founder of that. He is a real estate mortgage broker, and he's got a really interesting take. I learned a ton from him as to what could have been done differently in this application had he been around at that time. Maybe I already would have had a house and I wouldn't even be on this podcast. He's really great, very informative, and has a creative approach to mortgages.
Housing has become very creative nowadays. You need a mortgage broker or agent that has the ability to be creative. And also looking for mortgage agents or brokers that have those network and connections that can find different means of lending to your projects. It's very important.
Absolutely. The other few lessons that I have to share is proper budgeting for additional hidden costs. I was ill-informed at the beginning of the project on proper budgeting. Needed surprise costs appeared, which were not welcome. More money was needed for the site prep, delivery, and installation of the modular home. And I was under the impression that it was all included in my deposits, but that was extra on top of it. Keep those in mind as you speak with an experienced, tiny, modular ADU home builder to guide you in what other hidden costs you may not be aware of before you fully dive in. Ask those questions. Ask what other fees may be required, because they may include the fees for those types of delivery services and the concrete pad preparation of your actual piece of land so that your home can really sit on top and into the land. You really make sure that you speak to your builder ahead of signing anything or giving any deposits, because you don't be blindsided while you're in it, as I was. Now, this is where you come in, Arley. The last big piece I do talk about here is land development professionals. Work with a land development professional like yourself ahead of purchasing land. I cannot stress this enough. I really wish I knew you, Arley, last year and spoke to you before I put an offer on this land. It was beautiful land with utilities, but there were so many unknowns. It could have saved me a lot of financial loss and mental stress if I had worked with someone like yourself. I certainly wasn't over my head dealing with everything from working with the building company, the mortgage broker for financing, 5 alarm meltdowns with chaos happening because we weren't getting approvals, letters of offer once you get financing approved. It was just chaos. So being able to get some guidance from the building company on permits ahead of everything, because that was happening in the midst. You don't know if your municipality is going to approve your permits. Yet you've already put your deposits, you've already bought your land. It's just a nightmare in that sense. Or like you said, an unknown, and it could be an unknown fail that you just don't know until you're in it. I emphasize that existing utilities in a community, if possible, is very beneficial. The land had existing utilities, so that would help in cutting development costs and providing infrastructure within the community, rather than being a lone wolf with land randomly up north somewhere by a beautiful lake, but then you have to start from scratch on some remote piece of land with no development whatsoever.
You're absolutely correct, Nikki. When we're dealing with projects, there's a lot of unknowns. And a lot of times when I'm dealing with clients to manage their expectations, we have to look at different aspects of projects. So in project management, we have a triangle. This is not the Illuminati. This is project management. A triangle is actually evolved. In this instance, I like to simplify things for our audience. We're looking at the scope, the budget, and the timeline. When any of those things changes, it changes the rest of the triangle. If we're going to increase the scope, the budget would have to increase, and it affects the timeline. If we have a shorter timeline, it changes the scope. You probably can't build what we want. Also change the budget. This is also to help my clients understand what they're getting themselves into when it comes to the actual execution of a project.
Thank you so much for explaining the triangle theory and clarifying that it's not the Illuminati. Definitely a funny point. I like that. Arley, I do want to ask, how do our listeners and viewers who both truly believe in the tiny modular ADU home movement and have a piece of land in mind and are kind of getting their feet wet with the project before starting, how do they really fully understand the land development potential on that land that they wish to purchase?
Thank you for asking that question, because a lot of people are laser focused on the building and forget about the property. People interested in custom or modular tiny homes need to understand land development potential through detailed analysis like the Arleca Property highest and best use due diligence report, which evaluates zoning, market conditions, development options to identify the most financially viable use of the land. Specifically, these homeowners gain insight into zone and land use restrictions. That's when we look at the municipality, sometimes the zone and land use restrictions. And that's when you look at the tiny home versus garden suites and multifamily housing. Development potential and best use for the land. Land development options, where we explore opportunities such as land severance, assembly, variances, rezoning, and other regulations. We can really expand upon the land and really use the land to its fullest potential. And financial viability. assessing investment returns and risk factors to ensure that these plans are economically sound. By leveraging detailed due diligence reports and consultations that analyze these factors, tiny home owners can make informed decisions, ensuring their vision aligns with land use regulations and market opportunities.
Awesome. Arley, I really wish I had this due diligence report last year, but that's okay. We learn and keep moving forward. And I'd love to give our listeners and watchers the ability to connect with us. How do people get a hold of you?
I have a gift for our viewers, the Ultimate Tiny Home ADU Guide. Scan the QR code and you can download it via email. It'll help you, whether it's an ADU or a tiny home. This checklist will help you make sure that you're on the right path to making sure that your project's a success.
I also wish I had the checklist.
Nikki, what do you have for our viewers?
Scan the QR code. You can get connected to a landing page I made on my personal portfolio website, giving an overview of my story. You don't get into the nitty gritty. Why tiny home, modular home, ADUs a solution to our housing crisis. Summarize detail as to the different points as to why it works, and who the right audience or buyers would be for this type of home category within the real estate market. Finally, the 3 options outlined with the square footage, the cost, and if you're interested, you can fill out the form. There's some additional content, a presentation deck I did alongside yourself, Arley, at the real estate investor meetup group that lovely Andrea and Corey co-founded and is ongoing every month. If you are a real estate investor and want to keep learning and connecting with like-minded folk. So did a presentation there. And then there's a little bit of a summary with even more detail if you want it as to the 3 housing options and what those look like and the kind of process of what it would look like to start a project like this if someone is interested in that reassignment sale. And then I can also give some information as to how to contact me. My email is nicolepapp1@gmail.com. My Instagram is Nikki_P.PNG. And then you have got that landing page for these modular homes. You've got the link there and also the QR code. If you want to get tech savvy, reach out if you're interested in chatting more about my specific modular units for sale or my experience with the real estate investment project. And just mention where you heard about my modular homes. I'd be happy to chat more, share learnings, and keep the conversation going.
Speaking of which, Nikki, I think we should continue this conversation because there's a lot to learn for our viewers. Hop on another call and share more information with our viewers. Thank you so much for watching, Nikki. I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation.
Likewise. Thank you.